The ship breathed. Not in the way a living thing did, but in a way that made the metal feel less like metal and more like something aware, something shifting. The corridors, once rigid and worn from war, had smoothed into a dark, organic symmetry. Veins of pulsing energy ran beneath the surface, illuminating the path ahead with a cold, rhythmic glow. The air carried a faint hum, a vibration that resonated beneath the skin, neither sound nor movement, but something felt in the bones. Wyatt moved forward with measured steps, his pulse steady despite the unknown pressing around them. Every panel, every bulkhead, had altered itself, no longer just repaired, but redesigned. The black ship was not restoring what had been lost, it was becoming something else. And it had decided to bring them with it. Kayla's grip on his weapon was tight, his eyes scanning the walls as if expecting them to shift at any moment. "This isn't just an upgrade," he muttered. "It's like the whole damn ship is waking up." Lysera pressed her palm against a nearby panel. The surface rippled at her touch, responding, acknowledging. She pulled back sharply, her gaze flicking to Wyatt. "It knows we're here." Rhaegar's voice crackled through the comms, tension laced beneath his usual control. "The ship's systems are rewriting faster than I can process. Weapons grid, propulsion, structural integrity, none of it follows the original architecture anymore. Whatever's happening, it's accelerating." Wyatt didn't hesitate. He had spent years leading men into battles where the odds were stacked against them, where the difference between survival and annihilation was a single misstep. But this was different. This wasn't just war. This was the unknown reshaping itself in real time. A deep, resonant pulse rolled through the ship, sending a vibration up through his boots. Lights along the corridor flared in response, aligning in a pattern that hadn't existed minutes before. The ship wasn't just changing, it was guiding them. Kayla's jaw clenched. "And if we don't follow?" The corridor behind them darkened, walls closing in slightly, not in threat, but in insistence. Lysera exhaled. "I don't think we have a choice." Wyatt took one last look at the shifting metal before stepping forward. The black ship had made its decision. Now, they had to find out what it meant. Wyatt stepped forward, each footfall lighter than he wanted it to be, like the ship itself was adjusting for his weight, pulling him onward. The corridor ahead narrowed, its walls no longer steel but something darker, layered, shifting between solid and fluid as if deciding on its final form. The black ship was no longer the relic they had salvaged from the wreckage of war. It was something new, something living. Kayla stayed close behind, his grip on his rifle tightening with every step. His instinct screamed that this wasn't right, that nothing made by human hands should be able to do what the black ship was doing now. He had survived too many battles to trust things that changed without explanation. Even in the chaos of war, there were rules: ships burned, metal fractured, men died. But this? This was rewriting itself in real time. Lysera trailed her fingers along the wall again, her mind racing. The organic pulses beneath the surface weren't just energy relays, they were something closer to neural pathways, something aware. She had seen the data flooding the command terminals, information pouring in at speeds no human mind could process. The ship wasn't just evolving, it was adapting, responding to them, adjusting itself based on their very presence. Rhaegar's voice came through the comms again, more strained than before. "I need you to understand the scale of what's happening. The ship's molecular composition is shifting faster than I can map. We're looking at an entirely new form of technology beyond human, beyond Zelkoran. It's like the ship is rewriting the rules of physics as we know them." Wyatt didn't break stride. "Then we either learn to use it or prepare to fight it." Kayla exhaled sharply. "And how the hell do we fight something we don't understand?" The corridor ahead widened abruptly, opening into a vast chamber that hadn't existed on any of their schematics. Towering structures, neither entirely metal nor entirely organic, pulsed with energy that cast eerie, shifting patterns across the floor. At the center, a massive construct hovered silent, waiting. Lysera's breath caught. That wasn't here before. Kayla scanned the perimeter, his instinct screaming again. I don't like this. Wyatt took another step forward. The moment his boot touched the floor, the ship reacted. Light surged through the chamber, and the hovering construct flared to life. Tendrils of energy coiled outward, forming symbols in the air, symbols not of human origin, but something far older. Lysera's mind raced to process what she was seeing. The symbols weren't just patterns, they were a language. A message. She took a slow step closer, reaching out instinctively. The energy shifted at her touch, responding like a living thing. She felt something beneath the surface, a presence, vast and unfathomable, pressing against the edges of her consciousness. It wasn't hostile, but it wasn't human. The ship had always been a weapon. That much they had known. But now, it was something else. Something watching. Kayla's grip tightened on his weapon, his instinct screaming louder than ever. Tell me you can read that. Lysera barely registered his voice. The symbols weren't just words, they were concepts, raw and unfiltered, pouring into her mind faster than she could process. She staggered back, shaking her head. I don't think we're the ones in control anymore. The moment the words left her lips, the ship responded. The chamber trembled. The walls pulsed. And then, for the first time since it had begun its transformation, the black ship spoke. Not in words. Not in sound. But in understanding. A flood of knowledge crashed into them, a pulse of something neither technological nor organic, but something in between. Wyatt gritted his teeth as visions, memories flashed through his mind. A war before their time. A battle fought in the void against something even the Zelkoran feared. The black ship had not been built for humans. It had not even been built for war as they knew it. It had been built for something worse. Lysera gasped, falling to her knees as the ship's pulse resonated through her very bones. It's not just adapting to us, it's choosing. Kayla aimed his weapon at the core. Choosing what? The symbols burned brighter, shifting into something unmistakable. A name. A directive. And a warning. Wyatt's voice was steady as he read it. The Harbinger is coming. Wyatt forced himself to steady his breathing, the weight of the black ship's revelation pressing down on him like a gravitational force. The Harbinger. He didn't know what it was, but if the ship itself deemed it a threat, it meant something worse than the Zelkoran. And that was a problem. Rhaegar's voice crackled in through the comms, sharp with urgency. We have another issue. The ship's systems are shutting down entire sections of the lower decks, sealing off corridors. We're losing control of environmental stabilizers. It's as if the ship is compartmentalizing itself. Wyatt didn't like that. Like it's preparing for something? Lysera was still shaking from the knowledge forced into her mind. No. Like it's keeping something out. Kayla shifted uneasily. Or keeping us in. Before Wyatt could respond, a new alert flared across his visor display. Unidentified movement. Not Zelkoran. Not human. Saran Fall's voice cut through the comms, unreadable as ever. Something is inside the ship. It's moving fast. Too fast. Wyatt turned on instinct, weapon raised. The chamber they had entered was still shifting, reshaping itself, but now something else moved in the periphery. A shadow against the unnatural glow of the walls. Lysera whispered, more to herself than anyone else, this ship isn't just a weapon. It's a prison. The moment she said it, the walls split open. Not a door. Not a hatch. A rupture. The metal, or whatever passed for it, peeled back like torn flesh, revealing a void beyond. And from that void, something stepped forward. It wasn't Zelkoran. It wasn't human. It was tall, too tall, its body rippling between solid and translucent like an afterimage that refused to fade. Hollow eyes, deep and glowing with an unnatural light, fixed on them with something resembling intelligence. Wyatt fired without hesitation. The plasma bolt hit center mass and rippled. Like stone breaking the surface of water, the impact spread outward, energy waves distorting around the entity before sealing seamlessly. Kayla cursed, firing next. More shots. More ripples. No effect. Rhaegar's voice was urgent now. Get out of there. Whatever that thing is, it's not in the database. Wyatt didn't need to be told twice. Move. They ran. The chamber twisted behind them, shifting again, but now Wyatt understood this wasn't the ship reacting to them. It was reacting to it. The walls pulsed, sealing the rupture, but the entity didn't stop. It moved with effortless precision, gliding more than walking, closing the distance faster than should have been possible. Saren 4's voice came through, colder than ever. We've seen something like this before. Wyatt didn't stop running. Explain. There was a pause, just long enough to be unsettling. Morphic revenants. Zelkoran experiments. But this is worse. Lysera's breathing was ragged as she ran. The ship locked them away. It wasn't just adapting to us, it was keeping us from waking them. A doorway sealed behind them just as the entity reached it. It didn't hesitate. Didn't slow. It simply stepped through, dissolving into liquid shadow before reforming on the other side. Kayla's patience snapped. We need a plan. Wyatt agreed. Running wasn't working. Neither was fighting. That left one option. He stopped. Turned. Raised his rifle not to fire, but to trigger something else. The black ship had changed. It had adapted. That meant it had weapons it hadn't before. He just had to figure out how to use them. The entity paused, as if sensing the shift in intent. The air between them crackled. Wyatt took a slow breath. Let's see what this ship can really do. Wyatt kept his rifle leveled, finger hovering over the trigger, but he didn't fire. The thing standing before him wasn't just another enemy. The way it moved, the way it reacted, it wasn't mindless. It wasn't an animal. It was something else. Something aware. Kayla stood at his side, breathing hard. This isn't working. What's the plan? Wyatt didn't answer immediately. His mind was racing, trying to process everything. The black ship had imprisoned these things. That meant it had the means to stop them. Lysera's voice was strained. Wyatt. If this ship was built to keep them in, that means it knows how to neutralize them. We just need to. The entity moved. Not an attack. Not a charge. A step. Measured. Deliberate. It didn't rush them. It didn't strike. It simply closed the distance, the flickering glow of its hollow eyes fixed on Wyatt. Something about that made it worse. Saren 4 adjusted his stance. It's testing us. Wyatt tightened his grip on his weapon. Why? The answer came not from Saren 4, but from the ship itself. A pulse of energy rippled through the floor, a sound more felt than heard, and the walls responded. They shifted, not sealing, not trapping, but changing. The glow deepened, the once metallic texture taking on an almost organic sheen. Lysera's eyes widened. The ship's not fighting it. Kayla's expression darkened. Then we're already dead. Wyatt shook his head. No. That wasn't it. The ship wasn't abandoning them. It was adapting. The entity took another step, its shape flickering between solid and translucent. When it spoke, the voice was wrong, not mechanical, not organic, but something in between, lead echoes vibrating in the space around them. You are not Zelkoran. The word sent a chill down Wyatt's spine. It didn't just speak. It understood. Kayla lifted his rifle higher. You don't get to talk. Wyatt ignored him. His pulse pounded, but he forced himself to stay steady. You know the Zelkoran? The entity didn't blink. Didn't breathe. The war never ended. Wyatt's mind reeled. What war? Lysera's voice was barely a whisper. It's been fighting them. All this time. The realization hit like a hammer. The black ship had been drifting for centuries, its systems failing, its weapons dormant. But these revenants had never stopped fighting. Wyatt lowered his rifle by an inch. What are you? The entity tilted its head, the motion eerily precise. Prisoner. Soldier. Warning. The last word sent a spike of unease through Wyatt. Saran 4 was the first to process it. It's not here to kill us. Kayla scoffed. Could have fooled me. Lysera took a step forward, her hands trembling, but her voice steady. If you're a soldier, then who are you fighting? The entity didn't hesitate. The Harbinger. Wyatt felt the name sink into his bones. The ship had warned them. The entity had warned them. Something worse was coming. The wall shifted again, and for the first time, Wyatt realized the ship wasn't just adapting to their presence. It was preparing for war. The ship pulsed beneath their feet, a deep, resonating hum vibrating through the walls like a massive, awakening beast. The black ship wasn't just reactivating, it was shifting, responding to something unseen. Wyatt tightened his grip on his weapon, eyes flicking between the entity and the ever-changing walls. The organic sheen now glistened with fractal-like circuitry, patterns shifting in real time as though rewriting themselves. The air held a faint charge, static whispering against his skin. Lysera moved closer to one of the walls, cautiously raising her hand. The moment her fingertips brushed against the surface, the ship reacted. A cascade of symbols rippled outward, glowing lines of alien script forming before shifting into something readable. This is some kind of neural interface, she murmured. It's translating itself for me. Kayla was less impressed. I don't care if it sings us a bedtime story. What the hell is it trying to say? The entity's hollow eyes pulsed. A directive. The symbol solidified into meaning. Lysera read aloud, voice unsteady. Threat level critical. Harbinger emergence imminent. Engage protocol, Obsidian Requiem. Wyatt frowned. What the hell does that mean? Lysera hesitated before responding. I think the ship is arming itself. A deep rumble spread through the corridors as unseen mechanisms groaned into motion. The overhead lighting flickered, then changed entirely, taking on a sharp, ultraviolet hue. The atmosphere thickened not with air, but with something more abstract, a gravitational shift pressing down on them. Saran 4's cybernetic enhancements whirred as he recalibrated. Artificial mass fluctuation. The ship's manipulating local gravity. The corridor ahead of them restructured, panels folding away to reveal a central spine of pulsating, biomechanical energy. Conduits weaved like veins, carrying a luminescent liquid that pulsed in sync with the ship's thrumming heartbeat. Kayla took a step back. I don't like this. I really don't like this. Wyatt ignored him. His attention was on the entity. Obsidian Requiem. Explain. The revenant shifted, its liquid metal form momentarily destabilizing before reforming. Last defense. Fusion of ship and crew. Lysera's breath hitched. Wait, what do you mean, fusion? A section of the floor in front of them peeled open, revealing a sleek, coffin-like pod lined with needle-thin filaments of dark energy. The symbols on the walls changed, their meaning clear even before the entity spoke. Interface required. Wyatt understood immediately. The ship wasn't just activating weapons. It needed a mind. A commander. Kayla shook his head. No. No way. That thing isn't plugging into any of us. Saran 4's voice was unreadable. If the ship was built for war, then it was built to be piloted. Lysera turned to Wyatt, her expression a mix of awe and fear. If someone links with it, they won't just control the ship. They'll become part of it. Wyatt exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the decision settle over him. The ship groaned again, and suddenly the walls of the corridor behind them twisted violently, reshaping into jagged spires. A shrill, unearthly wail echoed through the passage. Kayla whipped around, raising his weapon. That's not the ship. The entity's eyes flared. It begins. A rift split open in the far end of the corridor. The metal didn't just part, it unraveled, as though something was rewriting reality itself. A figure emerged from the void, its form indistinct, shifting between solidity and mist. The air around it distorted, colors warping unnaturally. Wyatt knew instinctively this was no ordinary foe. Lysera's voice was barely above a whisper. The Harbinger. The black ship reacted instantly. Every surface came alive, conduits pulsing with raw energy. The coffin-like pod at Wyatt's feet vibrated, its interior glowing with an eerie, beckoning light. The choice was clear. Either they fought with the ship at its full power, or they died here. Wyatt took a breath, then stepped forward. Wyatt barely hesitated as he stepped toward the pod. The air around it pulsed with a silent energy, drawing him in like the gravitational pull of a dying star. The others watched, some with horror, some with resignation. Lysera's fingers twitched at her side, as if she wanted to stop him but already knew there was no other choice. Kayla gritted his teeth. Damn it, Wyatt. You don't even know what it'll do to you. Saran IV's cybernetic lenses flickered, scanning the pod's intricate network of alien tendrils. It is not merely a command interface. This is a symbiotic construct. If he enters, he won't just control the ship. The ship will control him. Wyatt exhaled sharply, staring at the shifting patterns on the pod's surface. Then I'll just have to make sure I control it first. Without another word, he stepped inside. The moment his body made contact, the filaments surged to life, wrapping around him like living wires, sinking through his armor and latching onto his skin. Cold fire shot through his veins, his nerves screaming in protest before they were drowned in a flood of raw data. His vision blurred, then expanded. He saw everything. The ship. Its vast corridors. Its power systems. The pulse of its core, the echoes of battles it had fought long before humanity ever touched the stars. And then he saw something else. A presence. Not just the ship, but something buried within it. A mind that was neither human nor fully machine. It had been watching. Waiting. It spoke without words, a voice carried on the electric tide of his thoughts. You are not the first. Wyatt's breath hitched. The data pouring into his consciousness fractured, shifting from tactical readouts to something deeper, memories that were not his own. A battle. A world burning. The black ship standing defiant against an armada unlike anything he had ever seen. But it hadn't been commanded by machines alone. It had a pilot. A warrior who had once stood where he now stood. And that warrior had failed. Wyatt's heartbeat thundered in his ears. He tried to pull back, but the ship refused to let go. His vision darkened, his mind dragged deeper into its abyss. Then the presence spoke again. You are not the first. But you will be the last. The ship convulsed. Outside, the walls trembled, the entire structure warping as though caught between two conflicting realities. Lysera staggered back, eyes wide as the symbols around her shifted, rewriting themselves at an impossible speed. The ship's core is destabilizing, she gasped. Something's overriding its systems. Kayla raised his weapon, pivoting toward the Harbinger still standing in the distance, its shifting form unfazed by the chaos. Is it them? Saran IV analyzed the distortions, his cybernetic enhancement straining to process the anomalies. No. This is coming from the ship itself. Lysera's eyes darted to the pod. Wyatt. The walls cracked. Light burst from the seams, blinding and raw. A high-pitched frequency screeched through the corridors, not just sound but something deeper, something that drilled into their skulls like a living thing. And then Wyatt's voice cut through it all. But it wasn't entirely his. Protocol Obsidian Requiem engaged. The pod shattered open, its tendrils retracting in a violent snap. Wyatt stepped forward, but his movements were wrong, too fluid, too precise. His eyes, once sharp with human defiance, now pulsed with the same eerie glow that ran through the ship's veins. Lysera took a slow step forward. Wyatt? His gaze snapped to her, too quick, too alien. For a brief moment, something inside him twitched, a flicker of recognition of the man he had been just seconds ago. Then the ship's influence surged again, drowning it out in a flood of raw calculation. His voice came softer this time, distorted by something else beneath it. I see it now. Kayla tightened his grip on his weapon. See what? Wyatt's lips curled into a small, unreadable smile. The war was never just ours. Then the ship lurched, and everything collapsed into chaos. The ship trembled, its very essence caught between the old and the new. Wyatt stood at the heart of it, his body rigid, eyes burning with the ship's energy. The others watched, caught between fear and hope, weapons half raised, uncertain whether the man before them was still theirs. Lysera's breath was unsteady. Wyatt, listen to me. His gaze flickered, something shifting beneath the surface. The ship's pulse resonated through him, a living conduit of something ancient. For a moment, just a moment, his fingers twitched, almost as if he was reaching for something beyond the static of his mind. The Harbinger remained still, its amorphous form watching. It had not moved since the shift began, as though it, too, understood something irreversible had been set in motion. Saran 4's voice came through the comm, distorted by the ship's interference. His interfacing with something deeper than just control systems. This is rewriting him. Kayla tightened his grip on his weapon. Then we shut it down. Lysera snapped toward him, her voice sharp. We don't even know if there's still something left to save. The ship groaned, metal folding like muscle, reshaping the corridors around them. It wasn't an attack. It was adapting. Preparing. Wyatt exhaled, his voice coming in a whisper. I understand now. Kayla took a step forward. Understand what? The glow in Wyatt's eyes flickered again. The ship pulsed in response, the hum of its core stabilizing. The war had never been just theirs. That thought echoed in his mind, layered with memories that were not his own. He saw them, those who came before. Their fight, their fall, their final choice. The black ship had never been a weapon of war. It had been a grave. A warning. And now it had a new pilot. His voice was steady, yet beneath it, something vast and unknowable whispered. This was never about winning. The ship's thrusters ignited, a sudden shift in gravity as it adjusted its trajectory. Alarms flickered across the holo panels, signals coming in from beyond the void. Something was moving. Something vast. The Harbinger finally spoke, its voice an echo of many. You have awoken it. Wyatt turned toward it, and for the first time, it hesitated. He took a slow step forward. No. It was never asleep. The ship lurched, the star shifting outside the viewport as the course correction finalized. The conflict had not ended, but something had changed. Lysera swallowed hard, watching him, searching for something familiar in his expression. What happens now? Wyatt looked past her, past them all, toward the endless dark ahead. His voice was calm, resolute. Now, we finish what they started.